Hello, welcome to the Plugged In podcast. We're going to be covering the digitalization of higher education in a limited series. So let's go ahead and introduce our co-collaborators here.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica. I'm excited to be here and chatting with you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Bobby Faye.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie.
And I am Cameron. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. Bobby, I know you have some really interesting points about how we got here with higher education as it's become more digitalized and become more, heavily behind a screen. So if you want to go ahead and share a little bit about that.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yes. So in the year 2020, the global pandemic of COVID, it brought about this transition to emergency remote teaching for higher education institutions across the United States. So it's prompting both students and the faculty to rapidly adjust to a different modality of teaching and learning. Other crises have induced disruptions for academic community, but not to the same extent as COVID-19, which has affected universities on a global scale. So that was inspired by fast digitalization during the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, awesome. And so, as we kind of navigate that and, as I don't want to say exiting out of COVID, but, we've really adopted kind of this, hybrid model or in some cases entirely digital model. So who's that really affected in regards to education?
Oh, yeah. So COVID-19 affected everyone across the nation greatly, with numbers rising with the virus. So universities and even K through 12 campuses were left unprepared with their students and staff. So that really did have the numbers of cases rising. So it switched everything to the digitalized world of education and teaching. So it really did affect everything globally, not just nationally, but globally.
Yeah, and it did happen like from morning to night, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it did.
Yeah, I think we all remember that when, I wasn't a student at the time, but I was working for a university. And, when we made the change, it was, like Monica said, it was pretty much a drop of a hat, so to speak.
Yeah, it's crazy to think at one time, like I didn't know what Zoom was. And now I feel like I have multiple Zoom calls every day. Like our world's just changed.
Yeah, our world is just Zoom. Maddie, it's really just Zoom, and it really did affect campus life, that which led us to Zoom. So a lot has changed since we had when the world first shut down with COVID-19 starting in March. For the university students, one of the biggest changes has been the significant disruption to campus life. So that led to many universities start to open up face-to-face teaching. Many students are heading back to campus for the first time. So that's a good thing in a long time. Now we're going back to the normalizing of campus life. So that's one thing that after 2 years of mostly virtual classes, most colleges around the country have welcomed back students to in-person classes as well. But just we're slowly going into the norm of things. So that's the good thing. But still the Delta variant vaccination mandates and masks are still, still mandated on campus. So I guess that's just a choice by the students.
I know where a lot of institutions are going back, but I know, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I don't think anything will ever be the same, right? Institutions have changed, campus life doesn't look the same, which could be a good thing, but I know something that we wanted to touch on conversation and future conversations is how everything has completely changed. Some for the better, some for I don't want to say the worst, but things will never be the same. And, that's something that we're learning to adapting with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely think, to your point, Monica, I definitely think we're seeing more and more virtual classes. I think that even if we were to go back to quote unquote normal overnight, I think, it has radically changed course delivery options. And I think in some ways that's a positive, in some ways that's a negative, and I think going forward, we're still kind of as we sit here, we're recording this in April of 2022. And I think, there's a tendency to say we're back to normal, but I think it's all still kind of in the back of our minds. Are we really ever going to be back to what life was pre-COVID?
Right. I agree, Cameron.
Yeah, even, I mean, our cohort, or well, us, we were just talking how we've never even met in person, right? While other
Yeah.
institutions are going back, we're
Mhm.
still here on Zoom. We're still engaging in a community, in a digital community like this. So I'm definitely interested in, hearing more of you guys' thoughts on,
Yeah.
what happened, how have things changed?
Well, and I think, it's worth noting that UTSA, our institution, has gone back to being on campus for a lot of courses, but I'd be curious to know how many courses are being delivered virtually now,
Yeah.
and what that would be compared to pre-COVID, and how many courses they moved to a virtual environment because of COVID, and how many of them are just not going to switch back.
That's crazy that you said that, Cameron. Like institutions, schools are slowly going back, but I do agree with what Monica said, that they're never going to be the same. Like the students' biggest concern for the fall was not getting the full social experience and college experience that they should be getting, So we're just playing it by ear, but just things won't exactly be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think as we kind of get into that, as we have more and more digitalization of education, you kind of start looking at the good and the bad that comes with that. And I think that's something that we're going to get into in a future episode is, the digital gap, I guess, so to speak. COVID-19 and the effects it had on the digitalization of higher education. We're going to go into some of the drawbacks of the digitalization of higher education, specifically the digital gap. And then we're also going to talk about benefits and then ways to potentially close the digital gap. So we look forward to seeing you guys in episode 2.